The wind howls through the jagged rocks of a remote coastline, carrying with it the salt spray of the Atlantic and the faint, ghostly whispers of a forgotten era. Perched precariously on the edge of a crumbling limestone cliff sits a structure that shouldn't exist. A skeletal remains of a mansion that once stood as a monument to gilded age excess, now surrendered to the slow, rhythmic rot of nature. To look at it from the beach below is to see a jagged tooth in the skyline, a hollow shell of stone and timber that seems one storm away from plunging into the churning surf. But for those willing to scale the treacherous path to its front gates, this ruin holds a secret more valuable than the gold that built it. The potential for a rebirth so radical it defies the very elements trying to tear it down. This is the story of the Cliffside Manor, a legendary estate that spent 50 years as a cautionary tale of isolation and decay, only to be reclaimed through a feat of architectural alchemy. It is a journey from the silence of an abandoned graveyard of memories to the roaring life of a luxury waterfall retreat. The Anatomy of Decay. Before the first stone was scrubbed or the first beam reinforced, the mansion was a masterclass in atmospheric desolation. Built in the late 1920s by a reclusive shipping tycoon, the house was designed to be unreachable. It was a fortress of solitude, featuring soaring Gothic arches, expansive terrace gardens, and a grand ballroom that overlooked the sea. However, when the family line vanished and the legal battles turned the property into a no-man's land, the house began its slow descent into the earth. Walking through the threshold in its abandoned state felt like stepping into a lung that had forgotten how to breathe. The air was thick with the scent of damp limestone and the sharp, metallic tang of rusted iron. In the grand foyer, the once opulent checkerboard marble floor was obscured by a thick carpet of moss and fallen plaster. Rainwater, having found its way through the collapsed copper roofing, had carved its own pathways through the interior, creating miniature canyons in the rotting floorboard to the upper levels. The walls, once adorned with silk tapestries and hand-painted murals, were now canvases for the elements. Layers of wallpaper peeled back like dead skin, revealing the sturdy, hand-hewn lath and plaster underneath. In some rooms, ivy had breached the window frames, snaking across the ceiling to create a living chandelier of emerald leaves. It was a scene of haunting beauty, a place where the boundary between the indoors and the wild had completely dissolved. The vision of the waterfall. The transformation of the Cliffside Manor did not begin with a wrecking ball, but with a radical observation of the site's greatest flaw, the water. For decades, the relentless rain and the natural springs within the cliff had been the house's undoing. The foundation was constantly under siege by moisture. The design team, rather than fighting the water, decided to invite it in. The central concept of the restoration was the gravity stream. By tapping into the natural aquifer that sat atop the cliff, the architects engineered a system that channeled water through the very heart of the house. What was once a destructive leak was transformed into a controlled, multi-tiered waterfall that cascades from the third-story atrium down into a subterranean grotto pool. This wasn't just an aesthetic choice. It was a functional one. The movement of the water provided natural cooling for the entire structure, and the sound, a constant, rhythmic white noise, masked the howling winds outside, turning a site of chaotic weather into a sanctuary of acoustic peace. The meticulous restoration, the process of bringing the mansion back to life, was an exercise in patience and historical reverence. Every salvageable element was treated like a relic. The grand staircase, a sweeping curve of mahogany that had miraculously survived the rot, was stripped of decades of grime. Artisans spent months hand-sanding the wood, revealing a deep wine-red grain that had been hidden under layers of gray mold. The windows, originally leaded glass that had been shattered by vandals and storms, were replaced with high-tech, reinforced panoramic panes. These new windows maintained the original Gothic silhouettes, but offered a seamless view of the ocean, making the residents feel as though they were floating between the sky and the sea. In the ballroom, the collapsed ceiling was not merely patched, but replaced with a structural glass dome. Now, instead of looking at water-damaged rafters, guests can look up at the stars or watch the rain dance across the glass, safe and dry within the reinforced walls. The transition from the dark, oppressive atmosphere of the ruin to the light-drenched openness of the retreat is perhaps the most striking achievement of the project. The interior philosophy of the luxury retreat is described as organic brutalism. The designers left sections of the original, weathered stone walls exposed, celebrating the scars of the house's abandoned years. These rough, gray surfaces provide a stark, beautiful contrast to the new additions. Polished brass fixtures, velvet upholstery in deep ocean blues, and floors made of reclaimed oak. In the master suite, which juts out over the cliff edge, the bed is positioned to face the sunrise. The walls are lined with acoustic felt made from recycled materials, ensuring that while you can see the power of the Atlantic through the glass, the room remains as silent as a tomb. The ensuite bathroom is carved directly into the cliffside rock, featuring a bathtub that is fed by a diverted branch of the central waterfall, allowing for a bathing experience that feels entirely connected to the natural world. The kitchen, once a dark scullery in the basement, was moved to the ground floor to take advantage of the terrace. It now features a massive island made from a single slab of local granite, and professional-grade appliances are hidden behind custom cabinetry that mimics the texture of the weathered driftwood found on the beach below. The external integration. A mansion on a cliff is only as good as its relationship with the land. The restoration extended far beyond the walls of the house. The engine graveyard at the back of the property, a collection of rusted farm equipment and old generators from the 1940s, was not hauled away to a landfill. Instead, the pieces were stabilized, sandblasted, and integrated into an industrial Zen sculpture garden. The rusted gears and iron skeletons of the old machines now serve as trellises for climbing roses and jasmine, a nod to the property's long history of human endeavor and eventual surrender. The terrace gardens were replanted with salt-tolerant native species. Instead of the high-maintenance English gardens of the 1920s, the cliffside is now a riot of sea lavender, coastal grasses, and hardy shrubs that thrive in the wind. Stone pathways, reinforced with hidden steel anchors, wind down the cliff face to a private cove, offering a way to engage with the ocean that was previously too dangerous to attempt. The sensory experience of the finished retreat. To enter the transformed Cliffside Manor today is to experience a total sensory shift. As you walk through the heavy, restored oak doors, you are greeted not by the smell of decay, but by the crisp, ozonated scent of falling water. The temperature drops slightly as the mist from the central waterfall catches the light from the glass dome above, creating miniature rainbows that dance across the lobby. The soundscape is the most transformative element. In its abandoned state, the house was a place of jarring noises, creaking boards, slamming shutters, and the shriek of the wind. Now, the sound is a cohesive symphony. The roar of the ocean is a distant bass note, while the interior waterfall provides a constant melodic tenor. It is a house that breathes with the rhythm of the tides. At night, the mansion glows like a lantern on the coast. Subtle LED lighting is tucked into the masonry, highlighting the textures of the old stone and the fluid movement of the water. From a distance, it no longer looks like a jagged tooth or a ruin. It looks like a beacon of hope. The philosophy of restoration. Why spend years and millions of dollars to save a house that the earth clearly wanted to reclaim? The answer lies in the value of continuity. In an age of disposable architecture and rapid urban development, the Cliffside Manor stands as a testament to the idea that nothing is ever truly gone if there is a vision for its future. The restoration of this mansion wasn't just about luxury. It was about honoring the labor of the original builders and the resilience of the materials. It was about proving that the most beautiful things are often those that have survived the dark. By embracing the very elements that sought to destroy it, the water, the wind, and the rock, the house has achieved a new kind of permanence, the eternal watchman. As the sun sets over the Atlantic, casting long, golden shadows across the polished floors of the retreat, the Cliffside Manor settles into the evening. The waterfall continues its tireless descent into the grotto, a silver thread connecting the upper reaches of the house to the foundations of the cliff. The house is no longer an abandoned relic of the past. It is a living, breathing entity that bridges the gap between human luxury and the raw power of nature. It serves as a reminder that even when we are at our most broken, when the walls are crumbling and the rain is pouring in, there's always the possibility of a transformation. All it takes is the courage to stop fighting the storm and start using its power to build something new. The Cliffside Manor remains on its perch, no longer a victim of the cliff, but its master. It stands as the ultimate waterfall retreat, a place where the history of decay has been paved over with the brilliance of rebirth, and where every room tells a story of survival. The whispers in the wind are no longer ghosts. They are the sound of a house that has finally found its voice again.